and welcome to Kitty Talk. Rinku, of course, is not here, as you know. She's in India, and we have Huma with us, and Sunny, of course. How are you guys doing?
Excellent.
Huma is a dear friend,
yes.
And she is also going to be hosting a really exciting show that's coming up on Rogers TV, City Sparks. So, Huma, tell us a little bit about that.
I did South Asian Focus TV, which was, kind of like Kitty Talk, but we had more like lifestyle events, as like community events and stuff. So I did that for 4 years, which was a lot of fun. And now I thought to move over to something a little bit more mainstream. So City Sparks is basically just going to be a very lighthearted show. We're going to have hopefully, comedians in each week to guest host and just talk about fun things happening around town.
Fabulous. So really excited about that.
Yes.
So we're going to start off with a few discussions about things that are happening around in the world. One of them is that recently Tim Cook, who's the CEO of Apple, has posted an open letter for the public talking about his request that he received from FBI to create a software to hack into the phones of terrorists who were recently involved, the couple who was involved in the massacre that happened in the U.S. So that's opened up a huge discussion in terms of national security versus privacy issues. How comfortable are you guys in terms of knowing that the government has access to your phones? Sunny, I'll start with you.
I think, if it's just in the hands of the government, maybe I wouldn't be so reluctant. But the fact that, once this technology is put out there, anyone can have access to it. So if this information, this technology got in the hands of someone, who isn't going to be like very honest with it, it becomes very dangerous because, phones aren't what they used to be. They're not just phones. There are wallets, there are bank accounts, our emails, our pictures, like so much of our personal self is tied to our phone. And I think that's why all of us, if we lose our phone for even 2 minutes, we're just like, where is it? It's not
panic.
It is panic because your whole life is in it. So I can understand from a privacy perspective that, the government, if they have that back door, it's good in a way, like if there is a terrorist or someone that's, that might be a threat to our country, that they can access the information. But at the same time, once the technology is created, anyone can access it. So if it gets in the hands of someone that,
Huma, what do you think? Those are valid points.
No, I think Apple is doing the right thing right now by refusing, just because what classifies as a terrorist, what investigation has the government done? There's been so many holes in a lot of stories in the past where we think, okay, terrorists did this, but then things come out where, it was linked to something else or somebody else
did it and they weren't there innocent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's like capital punishment, right? There's so many innocent people that end up going to jail. Years later we find out that the person wasn't guilty to begin with. So it's a touchy issue. Like, I am very private. Like everybody, it's a little computer, like you said. Our whole life is in the palm of our hands, and I would love to be able to completely trust the government with all of my information, but I would also like to know, what are they basing their assumptions on? Is the person that they want to hack into or look through information, is that person really a terrorist, and why do they think so? So without proof, I absolutely would not be comfortable giving my life information over to anyone.
And opposite to you, contrary, I'm very transparent when it comes to technology, and because we have a technology company, it's just like it's something that's second nature.
Right.
So I have tons of accounts online, and it does have a legal jargon which says that you have to kind of basically sign up your life, and pretty much everything is transparent with them. I'm okay with to a certain level, but like you both are saying, that when we're giving away our personal information, and phones are basically our gateway to our life, how do you trust the government officials, because it's not very standardized. It's basically comes down to their personal judgment, whether or not they categorize somebody as being innocent or guilty. So it's really kind of, it comes down to the point where we're giving access to our personal information and letting somebody else decide when we don't know if they're going to be fair or not. So
but on the flip side, though, the thing is, the reason why Apple even came up with the letter was because the government asked them to specifically, hack a phone or access a phone for one of the terrorists from California that did the attacks there. okay, for that, I was kind of like, okay, this might just be a big PR stunt for Apple to make them look amazing, which they are, but still, it's like, if it's just that one phone, can't they just open it up and like find the information that is necessary? Like, why are they making such a big deal about it?
I think, as far as I understand, the whole situation is that they will need to create a software to be able to access phones through iOS, their new operating system, and it would be built in that you can access pretty much everything. If there's, I think it's phones that they know that these might be they're suspicious that these might be terrorists used for that activity. But in general, I think that the letter is to ask the public in terms of their views, how they feel about their personal information being used for this purpose. So I'm glad that he's opening that discussion.
I think you made a good point that, you know, like, why not just the specific phone that they want to target? Are they trying to make us comfortable with the idea that they can access our information whenever they want? Are they trying to make us immune to that and think that it's normal? And then you made a good point as well, saying that it's a personal judgment of each person, you know, that so they're all human beings at the end of the day.
We'll continue that discussion. We'll be back after the short break and we'll carry on. We had a great discussion about our privacy versus national security, and we have some really interesting views, and definitely we have some questions as well. But it's definitely good to have that open forum where we can have that discussion, and definitely you're open to send in your views on social media on our pages as well. Another very interesting topic that has come up, and this is in the news as well, that Olympics have released a guideline for the transgender community to be more inclusive. So what they say is that you can compete in Olympics with your preferred desired gender. The only requirement that they have is that you have to go through therapy and tests a year prior and be tested for your testosterone to be a certain level. If you're competing, if you were a male and you've converted to a woman, like Bruce Jenner or Caitlyn Jenner. And if you convert it and then you're competing in the women's league, you have to make sure that your testosterone is below a certain level. I've read about it and I've read into it, and it's really kind of like complex in the sense that one of the examples I can take is Duti Chand is an Indian 18-year-old athlete who was banned from a lot of other competitions because her naturally, like she's born a girl, she's competed as a girl, and her testosterone is higher than the level that they're expecting, and she was refused to participate. So let's talk about the fact that is it fair to one gender over the other? We're talking about gender equality. At the same time, we want to respect human rights and the transgender rights. So what do you think about that?
It's such a conflicting topic because initially when I first started reading the articles, I had a very strong viewpoint, but the more and more I dove into it, I was like, wait, this is actually such a more complicated issue than we think, because like, I think it would be a case by case scenario. But overall, this is what my initial thought was. It's the fact that, okay, so if it's a man transgender transitioning into a woman, for certain like athletic competitions, just the way like our weight is distributed as men and women is different. So for like women, most of our weight and center of gravity is our hips and our stomach. For men, it's their shoulders and upper body. So when it comes to certain performances like tumbling, for example, a man would have the advantage because of the way his body is composed. So those things aren't changed, you know, when you switch genders. So it's like, is there an unfair advantage to someone who is a transgendered woman, right?
Right, like there are certain things which they're different body types, but what to your point that men and women are structured differently.
Yeah, you just
so,
have to,
so even if they change their gender and go through the surgeries, there would be certain things which would be an advantage or disadvantage to that matter. So how do they? Is it case by case, or how do they look into that?
I think you almost have to be a medical expert to kind of know the difference between, because you know, obviously anatomically by nature men are stronger. There's nothing, you know, wrong with saying that.
There
I
would be
think they're
exceptions.
physically, they're made to be. They're built differently, and I think that they would have a lot of advantages over a woman. Which was the question of mine, is like, how come when the women you know, changes into a man, there's no difference in that competition? I think, wouldn't she be weaker, or shouldn't there be kind of?
Yeah. I would beg to differ in the sense that I know a lot of women who would be physically stronger than a lot of men.
Really?
But these are athletes we're talking
Right,
about.
right.
They're all kind of like competing to the best of their physical ability.
Right.
And they train really hard and everything. So one thing that Duti Chand said was really interesting, and she said, I will not change myself. I was born this way, and I refuse to kind of go through any surgeries or transformations to change or alter the way I was born. This is who I am. And she refused to do it, and they banned her from games, and she was okay with that. But she said, I refuse to change and I really thought that sports was about equality, about gender equality. But I really respect she's really young, she's 18, and she's taking her stand.
And I like that about her, the fact that it's interesting because this issue wouldn't even be in the spotlight 20 years ago. So the fact that it's been brought to the spotlight at this point in our time, it shows like, you know, these are the issues that as a society we're facing, so we're going to have to work with it accordingly. So that just brings a whole new twist to the game.
So like you said, I think this is really, I think we're living in interesting times. There's so many changes that are happening in society, and in general it's up for discussion, and we have our views, and definitely I think it's worth having that discussion and opening our minds to new thoughts. On that note, there's a new channel called Viceland, which is launching on Rogers, and that's going to be happening this February. And it is really about touching on topics. One of them is this South Asian man. He's researching this whole topic of vidicates, which is basically around weed, and he calls his mom, a traditional South Asian mom, and asks her about her opinion, and that kind of it's interesting because it opens up a discussion, but at the same time it's kind of stuff that we talk to our parents about. Like there's things that we've kind of called our parents about and talked to our parents about, things that that's totally something they're not comfortable with. But so that's going to be happening soon, and that should be really interesting because
I love it because it's so funny. I've actually had this conversation with my parents. So
Yeah.
like me and my siblings and our parents. Well, because of the whole discussion of legalization of
Yeah.
marijuana in Canada. So even my brother was like telling my parents, you should get into this business now because like it's going to blow up soon.
So we'll talk more about that, and we'll be back after this short break. What is the one thing that women shouldn't do?
When the bill comes over, at least offer. That's all.
Oh,
Just offer. Just offer.
Please open up.
I know. Welcome back, and we're about to have a very interesting and exciting discussion about online dating. We have with us the founders of Dating Found. We have with us Karan and Mani. Welcome to the studio, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
On this show, we always hear about the women's side, and now we want to hear from the guy side of the story in terms of the whole idea of what do men look for when they're going on dates and what are the expectations. So let's start with what do guys really look for in a partner? And this is to both of you. We're going to start with Karan maybe.
Sure. Actually, men don't have much expectations when it comes to online dating. They are really they're not as choosy and picky when it comes to online dating, but they mostly look for when it comes to online dating, they mostly look for women's attractiveness. But as opposed to women, they have a lot of categories. They look at men's career. They look at their height. They look at bunch of
Criteria.
bunch of different
Yeah.
criteria.
So you're just saying that men, all they care about is appearance. Is that what we're
We got that clear. I think that's
look.
yeah.
They don't give a shit about your personality.